The Ottoman Empire, Doomed by the Opposition to Industrialize, by Ryan McDonald, Christian Buonamassa, Leon White, Tom Clarke, Greg McLaughlin, and Ed Rodier.
The Ottoman Empire was founded in 1299 in modern-day Turkey, known as Anatolia at the time. Throughout the 1300s, they began to extend west into the Balkan Peninsula, which is modern-day Greece and surrounding countries. Their first powerful leader was Osman I. His contributions to the empire led to the future conquest of cities such as Adrianople, Constantinople, and many Islamic cities that were part of the former Byzantine Empire. Throughout the empire, there was much pleasure and joy amongst the people due to improved life conditions under the new empire. The empire was able to expand to more people due to their religious tolerance and social developments.
Why did nations industrialize? Industrialization played a huge role during the 1700s and on, proving that those who industrialized prospered the greatest. Among those who did industrialize include England, Japan, Russia, France, and the United States of America. But why did these nations make the transition and industrialize? Well, first of all, they had the ability to do so. They all had the factors of production, which were land, navigable rivers, labor, a large workforce, and capital, or money. These nations had all of these factors. Second of all, these nations wanted to industrialize. They wanted to break away and get ahead of the rest of the world. These nations were able to advance not only socially, not only economically, but also technologically. There was a surplus of new technologies, and human labor was replaced with machinery. With these ideas and advancements in place, one would think the Ottoman Empire would decide to industrialize as well, but they did not. Why?
By the time the 1700s rolled around, Russia and Western Europe became an increasing threat to the Ottomans, being so that they had industrialized. The first major war was the Austro-Turkish War of 1716 to 1718, which led to the Treaty of Passarowitz. The treaty put the Ottomans on the defensive. Since they were on the defensive, they had to focus more on protecting their land, their people, and their assets, as opposed to being able to industrialize socially and economically. Eventually, the government realized these problems and they stepped in. They tried to make social reforms through schooling and education, and militaristic reforms by opening new artillery academies. This went well at first, but eventually the clergy stepped in and prevented them from doing so. At the same time, tensions between Russia and the Ottomans got worse when in 1768, Russian soldiers who were pursuing Polish Confederates accidentally burned down an Ottoman-controlled village. As you can imagine, the Turks did not take kindly to this. This eventually led to the Russo-Turkish War of 1768 to 1774. The Turkish went on to lose this war, as well as leading to many revolutions of Ottoman-controlled states in the early 1800s. Basically, since they had lost this war, other nations realized that they could break away and regain their independence from the Ottomans. When the Ottomans realized they were on a downward spiral, mainly because the other nations of Europe started calling them the sick man, they decided to make big changes. For a small period of time between 1839 and the early 1850s, this is exactly what they did. The Sultan, through his power, wrote a new constitution, which helped him write a good list of laws, created a modern army, which could help defend them from places such as Russia and Western Europe, and reformed the banking system. This helped provide capital for doing things such as industrialization. They had planned on doing this, but were soon stopped in their tracks. This all fell apart in 1853 with the Crimean War. The Crimean War was between Russia and the Ottoman Empire. During the 3-year war, the Ottomans lost control of many lands, such as on the Balkan Peninsula, in Western Europe, and out east where Russia played a major role. Millions of citizens were displaced, not only out of the country, but also to areas inside the country in which they were not used to living. The empire faced a major financial burden. Due to this financial burden, they could not industrialize in the way they wanted to do so.
The major effect of not industrializing for the Ottoman Empire was their utter demise. There were other reasons as well for its decline. Suleiman set a tradition of weak sultans because they would kill off their brothers and lock up their sons to keep their own power safe. The end of the Devshirme system took away from the power of their administration. Due to industrialization, the European countries became much more prosperous and powerful than the Ottomans. Europe also gained nationalism, a problematic topic for the Ottomans. The Ottomans attempted to reform by creating new laws and a constitution, but nationalism rejected a multinational empire. They also lost much of their territory during the Balkan and Italo-Turkish wars. Then the Young Turk Revolution in 1908 was the Ottoman citizens opposing their leaders. This revolution led to the Ottoman Parliament being revived and the 1876 Constitution being re-established. This marked the beginning of the end for the Ottomans. They joined the Central Powers in World War I, which didn't help their cause. The Caucasus campaign against the Russians was a major setback. In 1916, the Arab Revolt, assisted by the British, turned the war against the favor of the Ottomans for the first time in 2 years. The partitioning of the Ottoman Empire and the occupation of Constantinople and Izmir led to the Turkish national movement. The Ottomans lost the Turkish War of Independence in 1922, and the Sultanate was abolished. The Republic of Turkey was formed in 1923.
To sum up what we learned today, the Ottoman Empire and the regions it encompassed had a very dynamic history. Founded in 1299 in the land known as modern-day Turkey, the Ottoman Empire dominated the regions of the Middle East, Africa, and Eastern Europe. Throughout the 1300s, expansion in the regions surrounding the Ottoman civilization occurred. Contributions by powerful leaders throughout the Ottoman history, such as Osman I and Suleiman, led to the conquering of powerful cities like Adrianople, Constantinople, and other Byzantine cities. Conditions improved throughout these times. Religious tolerance and other social developments were beginning in this period. As time progressed, other nations around the Ottoman Empire began to industrialize, especially during the 1700s in Japan, the United States, England, France, and Russia. The Ottomans, however, did not industrialize and maintained a traditional economy. Other nations had a surplus of technology and the necessary factors of production to industrialize. These nations, like Russia and the nations of Western Europe, became increasing threats of the Ottomans. Wars like the Austro-Turkish and Russo-Turkish crippled the Ottoman Empire in the 1700s. After a short period of stability returned to the empire, they once again began to decline after the Crimean War and other events as territories were lost and financial problems along with national violence arose. By the time the 20th century came about, the Ottoman Empire had lost most, if not all, of their territories in Africa and Europe. During the First World War, they were a part of the Central Powers. While experiencing the harsh conditions of this brutal war, the Middle East slipped from their grasp through revolts. In 1923, Turkey was declared a republic, thus ending the official reign of an Ottoman Empire.